You're listening to
Catholic Sprouts,
the daily podcast for Catholic kids that strives to plant seeds of faith. Hey there, Sprouts. Today is Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. This week on the Catholic Sprouts podcast, we are talking about great Black Catholics, venerables, blesseds, and saints who had dark skin, who looked like Black people today. And we are reminded that no matter what you look like, where you grew up, the color of your skin, the color of your hair, the color of your eyes, God is calling you to be a saint. And the great congregation of saints in heaven with Jesus Christ is every color of skin imaginable. There is a saint that looks like you in heaven. So yesterday we talked about Venerable Augustus Tolton, the first Black priest in the United States, also known as Good Father Gus. Today we are going to talk about another venerable, Venerable Henriette de Lisle. Now, Venerable Henriette, she also was African. She was the great descendant of slaves. However, she herself was not a slave. She was a freed woman of color, and she lived and grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana. Now, even though she was a free woman, Henriette did not live in a very free world. Her mother and her sisters, also free women of color, they didn't have very many options. They could either live a life of poverty if they married another person of color, or they could try to be financially secure and live a comfortable life if they allowed a wealthy white man to simply use them. The wealthy white man would have a family of their own, but they would keep them on the side as well. It was basically another form of slavery and dependence. It was a whole system in Louisiana where women of color were used. Now, Venerable Henriette grew up in this culture. Her mother existed in this culture, but she grew very close to Jesus Christ, and she realized that first of all, this was against marriage. It was against the dignity that she was born with. And also, she desired to give her whole self to Jesus Christ entirely as a religious. However, at the time in Louisiana, as a woman of color, there was no religious community for her to join as a sister. So she spent many years as a teacher, particularly teaching those that were still slaves. And finally, she felt the call to found her own order. In Louisiana, she started an order of sisters called the Holy Family. Sisters of the Holy Family. Now, the Sisters of the Holy Family worked hard to educate those that were slaves. They opened nursing homes for people of color, and they worked tirelessly to help the poor. Henriette de Lisle gave her whole life in service for those that had no one to serve them. Because remember yesterday when we talked about Venerable Augustus Tolton, just because slavery ended doesn't mean that life was good for former slaves. They had no money, no resources, no support, and oftentimes they were left to make either desperate decisions or to suffer. So Venerable Henriette de Lisle founded an order, the Sisters of the Holy Family, to care for them. Also, her order went on to found the first high school for African American girls in New Orleans. Now, this order of sisters, the Holy Family, Sisters of the Holy Family, still exists in New Orleans today. There is a street named after Venerable Henriette de Lisle, and people have been praying through her intercession, and there are some miracles that have occurred. These are under investigation because remember yesterday we talked about how there are various steps to sainthood, and we take investigating these things very seriously, making sure that these things really happened and that people are telling the truth. So there is a good chance that in the coming years, that miracle will be verified, and soon we will know her as Blessed Henriette de Lisle, and maybe even one day a full saint. And so, Sprouts, once again, my challenge for you is to pray through the intercession of Venerable Henriette DeLille that we can love all people, no matter what they look like or even what they might have done to us, that we can be open and loving to them, to see their needs and to respond because Christ is there inside of them as well, and respond with love. Venerable Henriette DeLille, pray for us. That's it for Catholic Sprouts today. We'll be back tomorrow, but until then, continue to grow in your faith and truly sprout into the beautiful creation that God created you to be. Just one more thing. This week we are talking about great Black Catholics because it is so important that every child, every person in fact, know that no matter what they look like, they are called to be a saint as well. Earlier this spring and early summer, I was struck when I heard Black Catholics alive today talk about how they grew up not realizing that people that looked like them were saints, and therefore not realizing that they could be a saint as well. This is horrible. That is not how any child should grow up. And also, every child, no matter what they look like, should realize that every other person, no matter what they look like, are also called to be a saint. Now, I know that racism, especially in the churches, is something that we are all working to eliminate. Over here at Catholic Sprouts, we're trying to pitch in and do our little bit. Now, to this end, we created a board book called Saints Like Me, Great Black Catholics, that features each of the saints that we're talking about on the podcast this week, as well as a few others. Our goal is that this book can show children that there are great Black Catholic saints in heaven, and that they too, no matter what they look like, can be a saint as well. The book is on sale right now, and you can find a direct link to it in the notes for this podcast episode. And don't worry, we are already working on great Asian Catholics, great Latino Catholics, and we are open to any other ideas that you have, because we are all called to holiness. We are all called to be saints. And when we get to heaven, we are going to be amazed and rejoice at the great variety of saints already there, worshiping at the altar of God.